Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. This is a regular meeting. It is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. It is
9:06.
9:06 a.m. I don't have my,
We don't have our board.
That broke down, so we're in the process of replacing. Somebody dropped it, actually. That's my guess. So
And-
we'll get a new clock.
this session is set to go until 11 a.m. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menser. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. Also in the boardroom is County Manager Ramiro Chavez, as well as staff from Community Planning and Economic Development, their director. To discuss the topic on the agenda, which is the 2022 through 2023 official dockets, public comment review, and consideration of mid-cycle amendment briefing. So I'll pass it on.
And thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, good morning. This is the next step in the process. The last time you heard this particular item was, is you got a yearly process where you consider opening the docket or not. Where you assess any additional applications the staff has received. And those applications were described to you last time. And the board decided just to go through the public comment process. And that is, I believe, prudent steps that you need to take before you can make a decision whether you need to go with the existing docket, or maybe add or remove or reprioritize any items that you have on your docket. And staff will walk you through some of the options that you have when the time comes during this presentation. So hopefully today we can go through and summarize some of the comments that we have received. They have a significant paper comments they have submitted. We will now go through each one of those. It will take just about 3 days to go each one of those. But in general, we'll give you a perspective on the gist of the comments you have received. And obviously, if you have any particular questions on the specific comments, we will be ready to provide that information to you. So with that in mind.
Yeah, let's just jump right in. So Commissioners, thank you. As the mid-cycle, in the middle of the process, the mid-cycle docket, the information that the staff has facilitated and received in terms of comments is vast, as you've seen, but the decision is pretty straightforward, as you've seen in the briefing documents. It's either to reaffirm the existing official dockets or add, remove, or reprioritize, just like the county manager said. But our goal is to make sure that the Board of County Commissioners is comfortable with all the comments that they receive so that there's a full understanding. So you, the board, can make a decision and provide staff direction on either the reprioritize, add or remove, or to stick with the docket that you provided to us in 2022. So a lot of information, but the decision is relatively straightforward. The decision of the items, as you can see also in the decision-making packet, is it's not based on the merits of the applications at this time. It's based on the Board of County Commissioners and the information that you receive. So we're prepared to move forward. Chris, do you want to pass it over to Maya? Or?
Yep.
Okay, Maya's ready to go. Maya
Thank
Tipos,
you.
Senior Planner.
Thank you. Maya Tipos, Senior Planner with Community Planning, here today to talk about the 2022-2023 official dockets and public comment that we received following a written comment period. So this is a follow-up briefing from January 18th, where we reviewed all of the existing docket items and also all of the new proposals we received. And at that briefing, the board provided direction to hold a written comment period. And today we will be going over those public comments with you. So today's briefing, we'll review the public comment, high-level summaries of public comment and major themes that we received on the proposals. We'll go over staff capacity and certain things that come into play when reviewing these proposals. And the direction that we're requesting from the Board of County Commissioners at this briefing is whether to reaffirm the existing official dockets and the priorities set by the board in March of 2022, or to add, remove, or reprioritize items on the official dockets. So looking at the docketing process and the steps that are associated with that, every year we bring all of the proposals before the Board of County Commissioners and we review the status of them. And our dockets are set for a biennium, so they cover a 2-year period. This is a midway year where we do a check-in, and the board has the opportunity to make changes at that midway point. So it's not a requirement, but there's an opportunity for it. We've moved through the process and held our 20-day written comment period. Now we're going to go over the written comments today at this briefing. And then if the board chooses to make any changes to the official dockets, we can start working through that process. Otherwise, reaffirming the existing official dockets, we would end the process today and none of these additional steps would need to occur. So as the director mentioned, the scope of decisions is very narrow today. We're asking the board whether to reaffirm the existing dockets and the priorities set in March of last year, or if the board would like, we can discuss adding, removing, or reprioritizing proposals on the official dockets. You received a very, very big packet for this briefing, and about 90% of that is public comments that we received, but there is the proposal worksheets are included in that packet. Because it's a mid-cycle check-in, we did not print binders this time. We do those in the reset years, but each project sheet now has a backside that includes a high-level summary of written comment, a preliminary analysis of the proposal, and an estimate of staff time to complete it if it was on the official docket already. If the board decides to make any changes or is thinking about items they wish to consider, there's a spot on the back of these sheets to record what your decision is as an elected official. That's just to help you keep track through the process. Things that the county commissioners may wish to consider when thinking about the decisions before you today. All proposals, all that are incomplete on the official dockets, and all new proposals will return to the Board of County Commissioners in early 2024. So not even 12 months from now, we'll be bringing all of these items back. Next year is a reset year since our dockets end in 2023. And then we will go through this process again early next year, typically January or February, we start that. Any changes to the official dockets in this cycle will affect our currently officially docketed items, and it will create a 60 to 90 day time addition to existing projects. The county commissioners can consider public comments and the public interest for those proposals, whether folks were for or against, and what the major concerns and themes were on the proposals. That can also be an indicator on how much time might go into a project based on the level of public engagement we're seeing now. We can expect to see potentially a lot of public engagement if an item is docketed. Also, the driver for a proposal, is it a legal requirement? Is it to streamline permitting processes and make things easier for staff and citizens? Or is it a priority of the community? Staff capacity to work on proposals, work completed to date on existing officially docketed items. Some of our items are very, very close to the finish line. And then some docketed items are large and they might impact other docket requests. So some of the studies like the community-driven review of agriculture and the countywide industrial land study, both of those are on the official dockets right now, and they could potentially affect some of the site-specific rezone requests that are before the Board of County Commissioners today.
Go ahead, Commissioner Answer.
Just on this slide, before you go, at the top, when you say proposals returned to board for docketing, my question is, if usually we have like 3 choices, we add it to the docket and prioritize it, we put on the preliminary docket, or we say, kind of deny it. In this case, since we're mid-cycle, if we weren't adding it, do you still need that second, do you still need us to decide if it's preliminary or denied, or will all of these, it sounded like what you were saying is all of these proposals will come back for consideration next year, so it sounded like maybe we don't have to make that distinction. The distinction is add it or not add it. If we don't add it, do we also have to decide preliminary, docket, or deny today, or now?
Right. So if the board chooses not to reaffirm the current
docket, then everything you see before you, except the items that have been completed in 2023, will come back before you. They will all be maintained on the preliminary docket. If you choose, if the board chooses to move things around, reprioritize, add, or remove items, you can do that in one-offs, in a bulk. But we would ask that there's a decision made for them to be removed, maintained on the preliminary docket, or maintained on the docket item today.
The default for the new items is that they're gonna be in the preliminary
That's
docket.
correct. The default is the preliminary.
Okay, that's what I need to.
So looking at current official dockets and new proposals that we received, we have, I'm sorry, was there a question?
Nope, it was just a mug. Keep going.
Okay, thank you. So we have two dockets, one for the comprehensive plan amendments and one for development code regulations. Comprehensive plan amendments are the vision for the county. Development code amendments are really the on-the-ground regulations for building and development. And we bring both of those dockets to the county commissioners together at the same time because the same staff works on both of these. So together, we have 27 items. 6 of those have been complete, and 1 of those restarts every year. So that leaves 22 officially docketed items that we are currently working on. And in terms of new proposals, we have 14 on the new proposal list. Those are all on the preliminary docket. So that brings us to 36 items total. If you add back in the complete ones already, that's 41. A quick look at our successes and capacity moving forward. In 2022, we finished 6 proposals, and 1 of those restarts every year. That's the capital improvement program. We made significant progress on many others. So we're close to the finish line on a lot of other proposals, and we expect we can probably get through between 5 to 10 more by the end of this year. But there's a lot of big ticket items, and these are items that require a lot of staff time and process associated with moving them through. They can take longer time in planning commission, longer review time, more questions from our planning commission. Sometimes they have a higher level of public engagement. We can receive lots of comments on these proposals, questions from citizens, and that can add time to the process for us to bring through planning commission and also to the county commissioners. And then some of these proposals have additional process in them. So for example, the joint plans go through review with joint planning commission review with the cities, and they also go to the city council. So those are added steps and add process time. And then also Grand Mound has a separate step that goes through the UGM subcommittee. Those are all just additional process time that's associated with these types of projects. They can also have stakeholder groups associated with them, which adds time to the process. And they typically take longer. They take a lot of staff time to move through the planning commission and facilitate review of that. They can also have a very high level of public engagement, and all of that adds to the length of review. Some of the projects that we consider big ticket items are community-driven review of agriculture, the joint plans, and the UGA code updates, the wireless code updates, Grand Mound Subarea Plan, Nisqually Subarea Plan, and also the countywide lands industrial study. So looking at staff capacity, we estimate about 2 to 3 years to complete remaining officially docketed items. We won't be able to complete all of the proposals if new proposals are added in the docket timing. So some of these will roll over to the next docket. And what impacts timing? As I mentioned, there are a lot of process steps associated with review of these items. Timing really depends on the level of public engagement we have, the planning commission's review, the types of questions we have to review for our planning commission, and how many meetings it takes us to move through that process, and also facilitating the Board of County Commissioners review. So we do spend a lot of time on comments, taking questions back to our advisory boards and commissions. And then, as I mentioned with joint plans and Grand Mound Subarea Plan, there can be extra steps that add additional time to the process. So moving into public comment, We received 321 individual comments, and a number of those touched on multiple topics. So that's why the numbers on the slide don't add up to 321 exactly. But comments that we received during the docketing period, most of these were on an officially docketed item, which is CPA 22, the Bar Holdings Land Use Amendment and Rezoning Request. And then we also received, the next big players were on the cannabis related amendments, which is a proposal for the Development Code docket, and the Port of Tacoma Land Use and Rezoning Request. And then there were a lot of other proposals that had a smaller amount of comments on them. So I'll go through the major themes of those biggest players right now. So generally speaking, we had some general themes on our docket for this mid-cycle check-in. There were several comments that we received that requests the board don't make any changes and continue with the official dockets, reaffirm the existing priorities. There were some requests to delay site-specific requests, like specific land use and rezoning requests until completion of the industrial land study and also the community-driven review of agriculture study. And then there were some requests that the board remove some site-specific requests from the docket, and which specific proposals comments asked be removed varied depending on the commenter, but generally those included the Upcastle proposal, the Scott proposal, Bar Holdings, Black Lake Quarry, and Port of Tacoma. So mostly focusing on those site-specific land use amendments. So breaking it down by proposals for the POG land use and rezoning request, we received a number of comments, just below 10 comments on that proposal that were in support of the proposal being reviewed and asking that it be prioritized higher and staff assigned to it. Right now, it's the lowest priority on the official comprehensive plan docket. We received a number of comments, just over 20 on the cannabis related amendments. All of the comments we received on that were in support of it being considered and generally supportive of the amendments that are being requested, which are that cannabis be considered as agriculture and that setbacks be reduced for those types of uses. The Bar Holdings proposal, we received over 200 comments on this proposal specifically. I would say about 75% were in favor and 25% opposed. Generally speaking, the comments that we received in favor of the proposal were in favor of a conceptual site plan that the applicant provided in their written comment. And the comments in favor cite that there's a need for services in the area. They don't want to commute into Tumwater for groceries, reducing travel time and traffic associated with that, and that the uses would generally be appreciated in that area given the new housing developments in that part of the urban growth area just north of that property. Comments against the proposal note that the UGA does not need to be expanded and that there is land within the UGA to support these types of uses, that it could impact rural character, that the site was previously removed from the urban growth area as part of a growth management hearings board case, and that there could be trafficked impacts from development at that site. We did receive a comment from the city of Tumwater. They commented back in 2021, and they also commented with this docket cycle. They're generally supportive of the vision for that site, and they support mixed-use development at that site. However, they do note in the comment that there is significant process associated with this type of an amendment and a UGA expansion, and that there will need to be findings made that are in accordance with state law and countywide planning policies. They suggested that the applicant consider general commercial and mixed use instead of a light industrial zoning designation. And they also note that there are going to be significant challenges in processing something like this, and that it will require significant staff time to move through the process. And there's already constraints on city and county staff. I do want to note that we did receive a comment from the applicant for this, saying that they would be willing to consider the other types of zoning designations that the city recommends. So if this is added to the official docket, that will be folded into the process. There are no changes needed with that. Going over the Port of Tacoma proposal, this is another proposal that we received a few comments on, roughly 10, and 8 of the comments we received were in against, 2 in favor. Comments that are against this proposal cite concerns with impact to rural character, wildlife, and a broader impact to the rest of the community through the code change request to Rural Resource Industrial Code. Some of the comments in opposition also referenced previous comments received on a former application, which was from North Point Development back in 2019 and 2020. There were roughly 700 comments and 6,000 petition signatures at that time, and we provided that as a separate attachment to the board, but do note this is a different application and a different applicant this time. So items in support of this proposal cite changing economic conditions since the COVID happenings, and also opportunities to work with the port to not only allow for economic development, but protect the environment at the same time. The Port of Tacoma provided a comment that says economic conditions have changed substantially, and this is an opportunity to consider habitat preservation goals with a need for economic development, noting that there's a need for large industrial sites in this area. And finally, not on this slide, I want to go over the Beaver Creek proposal. We did receive a couple of comments in support and against that proposal. Generally, the comments in support cite that there is a need for large industrial sites, much like what's mentioned in the Port of Tacoma proposal comments. And then comments against that proposal cite that there are concerns over wildlife impacts, impacts to rural character, and that urban and industrial uses don't belong outside of the urban growth area. So just summarizing the
Second,
request.
Maya, Commissioner Edwards has a question.
Maya, on the other issues, you gave a number of how many comments were made. On Beaver Creek, you did not. I'm just curious.
It was a small amount. It was under 10, but I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I think there were only 4 comments or so.
On slide 10.
Okay. Thank you.
So next steps, just summarizing the options for the board today, reaffirming the existing official dockets and the priorities set in March of 2022, as Commissioner Menser asked, excuse me, earlier in the briefing today. If the existing dockets are reaffirmed, all of the new proposals will stay on the preliminary docket and they'll come back before the board in early 2024. That's the default. If the board wishes to add, remove, or reprioritize proposals, we can go through that either at this time or at an additional time, and I have some extra slides to help facilitate that process. But first, I'll answer any questions you have on the proposals or the comments we received.
Thank you, Maya. Can you stop sharing the screen, please? Okay, so we'll start off with questions. Commissioner Edwards, we'll start off with you.
I don't believe I have any questions. I have some comments when we get ready to make our decision. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menser?
There's a few different ways to talk about the staffing and capacity issue, and one of the ways you went through, but there's a kind of another organization of that information at the back of this packet. Page. Ooh, I don't want to get it wrong. It says attachments A through C, page 78 and 79. It's the last 2 pages of this packet.
Oh, okay.
Are you with me now? I'm gonna ask you a question about it.
Maya, did you hear Commissioner Menser's question?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
So first off, do you have the packet?
Yes, I do.
Has 78 of 494?
Yep.
Attachment B, staff estimates at the end.
Yes, and so what is the question?
Question is, getting there. Question is, at the chart, at the bottom, it says subtotal, this is in terms of FTEs, subtotal for all previously officially docketed items 10.4. Subtotal for all new and preliminary docket items 10.9. How many staff do we have that are working on these?
We have about 5 staff that are working on this, but it's probably, yeah, 5 staff is about the estimate. Some people are not working full-time dedicated to these types of items, so that's about the rough estimate.
So we have half as many people as we need to get the items we've already docketed completed.
That's correct. And so the reason I did not focus on these numbers is because it all depends on the time frame to complete the items. We have an official docket that goes through the end of 2023. The 10 FTE estimating here is for the remaining of that docket cycle. We expect that we can probably get through roughly half of the officially docketed items, give or take. It just depends on the public process. There are a lot of unknowns moving these things through. And then some of those will roll over into the following year, into 2024. Adding any new items will require additional time with our current staffing, but adding new staff is not necessarily a guarantee that all of these items will be complete in a year or 2 years, because there are other bottlenecks in the process, like our planning commission review and facilitating public hearings for the community to provide input on. So yes, I framed the conversation a little bit differently, but these numbers get at the same thing in a little bit of a different way.
Questions? I don't have any more questions. You want other comments or?
Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and switch to discussion.
Oh, yeah, I want to switch to discussion, please.
Okay, so with that, Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
You know, I think that government, well, I'm going to say in this case, government is the problem, not the solution. And we cause delays. I know it's all well intended, but I'm just going to use an example of how we cause delays, and I can't justify it or speak to the underlying causes, I guess. But recently, we've been dealing on the wireless code, for an example. And I think we've been on that for a couple of years now. And we went through quite a bit of public comment. The planning commission had a lot of different input. And in the end, we hired outside attorneys even. And in the end, we basically came up with no solution. And the board wasn't very happy with that no solution, but we discussed that why can't we use other folks? And one of the comments was, there's apparently a good code already in place, not the same as what we might have, but it's from Silicon Valley. And those are the people that are the smartest about the whole wireless process. And yet, we didn't even bring them into the equation of trying to figure this out until citizen involvement brought those comments to us. And then we, as a board, said, well, we're not satisfied with what we've been given. Why do we have to reinvent the wheel? Okay, so all of these issues that we're talking about here are pretty complicated issues. But the one thing we know for sure is times change. And during those times of change, the interest rate, for an example, skyrockets. The price of material skyrockets. And here we sit on our hands for a long period of time. And as these changes come into play, it just drives the cost of everything we do, whether it's projects presented here on this docket, or if it's someone building a house. And it is really frustrating to me to be held hostage because I don't know anything about planning. I don't know what it takes. I know it's a headache. It takes a lot of coordination. But oftentimes we come up with things like the wireless code. How come we didn't get any input? Why was it that citizens had to bring this up in a very controversial testimony? So I want to make sure that we do try to do our best to do the public's work, like creating economic development is a big piece of it for me. And I think that we are obligated to accept new things when they are brought in and have adequate time for those people that are bringing proposals forward to make their case, so to speak. So that's kind of why I am very much in favor of adding to our docket. And then you might say, well, how are we gonna do it? Well, I think there are ways to do it, but I don't wanna hog the show here, so I'll hold it down.
For me, I agree that economic development is a key consideration in the docket prioritization. It's my opinion, which I've stated before, that the Lacey Joint Plan and the Grand Mountain Sub-Area Plan and all the projects embedded in it are by orders of magnitude, the most important economic development projects on this docket and in this county. So given the staffing and we're in mid-cycle, I want those done. And I've been beating that drum since I got on the board, especially on the Lacey Joint Plan. But given where we're at, I'm not supporting anything added to open in the docket at this point.
I agree on the timing piece. I happened to be staying late for an intercity transit meeting, and I popped in kind of right as the planning commission was discussing this topic at their meeting, in terms of adding items to the docket. And the general consensus that I heard was concern and the timing of trying to get through all these items on the next 2 years. And I thought those concerns were valid, and just seeing that we only have 5 staff, the need for, 10 just to get through, and these aren't with, adding all the items. I am also a huge supporter of economic development. I think some of the items that we've added on our docket really support that, but I think we need to get them done before we're adding any more onto it. I think we've been dragging this bucket for a long time. The Grand Mountain Sub-Area Plan has been on this kind of holding pattern. I think that needs to get planned. The joint plan updates for Tumwater, which that got completed, but Olympia and Lacey and Yelm need to be completed. There's several on here that we need to get through that are pretty huge. For me, I think the only thing that I would advocate for on this is the natural landmark program. The only reason for that is that the applicant who did submit this application is elderly, and he also has Parkinson's, and so he's really wanting to complete this item. It is definitely something he's really trying to do before his condition gets worse.
It's on the docket, though. It's
It
just,
is on the
we're just
docket,
talking
but
about
I'm just
priority.
prioritizing it so that way we can push it up the priority. Right now, it's pretty 16 on there. It's already on our docket, and that's the only basically thing that I would ask to change on the mid-docket cycle is to move that item up. Other than that, I'm kind of on the same of not currently adding any items. I feel we're gonna have, there are a lot of big items that we're gonna be completing this year, it looks like. And at that time, we can talk about it early next year about adding some of these development code and comprehensive plan, which it's not that I'm not interested in them. I think they're great items that can come on to our docket, but just, I want to get done with some of these items. And even if we were to add these items onto the docket right now, that would be so far down the list that that we wouldn't even get to them. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
So I've made this point before, but I just want to, that you touched on something that's really important. I mean, we can just add things to the docket. make the applicant feel good, pat ourselves in the back, but it's not really doing a service because they're not gonna get work done and it's creating a false expectation. And then on the back end, we open ourselves to criticism that, oh, you took 5 years to do my project. Well, I mean, and that's number one. And number two, I just wanna say that all three of us have shown a willingness to engage in changes to make these projects go faster or to create greater capacity. So when you say, oh, we only have 5 people, why don't the board just, if the board really cared about this, they just hire 5 more people? And we've talked about that, but I just want to say it's a lot more complicated than that. It's not just hiring 5 more planners and then twice as much work gets done. Because if it were that easy, we'd probably just do that. But it's planning commission capacity. It's, Josh has walked us through it many times. He's had to tell me 3 or 4 times why it's not just that easy. Because if it were that easy, and again, that's not necessarily easy, you gotta have the money to pay for that, but it's at least a straightforward. If we could find the money to double the amount of planners and get double the amount of work done, I think all 3 of us would do that. But between the growth management rules and Maya hit on certain things that have to go through subcommittees and have to go through city councils and have to go through the urban growth TRPC subcommittee, I mean, it's not just as easy as that. The process is not set up. So I just want to say that I mean, we are committed. It's not just an unwillingness to fund planners to get more work done, because I do want to get more work done. I've tried to set a goal of like, let's figure out how we can structure this process to where we can look applicants in the eye and say, if you get put on the docket, you're probably going to get done in a 2-year cycle. And we can meet that. That's what I want to be able to say to people. That's not awesome news for some people, but at least if you can tell them 2 years, and they can kind of count on that unless something, it's a big ticket item or something comes up, I think that'd be great. So that's where I'm trying to figure out a way to get there, but we're not quite there.
Commissioner Edwards, and then I'll pass it to Joe.
I guess I feel we can get it done. We need to make changes to the way we get it done. And those changes, I don't know if it's a crude term or what, kind of the pay to play type of thing. What we're talking about here is not individuals that are building a house. We're talking about individuals that are building jobs and projects and community. And anytime we stay in the way of that by putting our bureaucratic process over the needs of the community, I think we're doing the community a disservice. And there are many jurisdictions that allow these bigger projects to be funded by the proposer. And I do not understand our resistance to that. And I want to go back to the wireless code. That wireless code has frustrated me beyond belief. And I think that had we got the information early, we very well might have given staff direction. Well, where has this wheel been invented? Well, bring us a copy of their code and let's see if it fits. But we never do that. We continually delay. And I see this as more delay. I do believe we could do it. We could put some money towards it. I'd take money out of the reserve fund right now and hire those people if that's what we were forced to do. But I think we ought to let the proposers carry part of the load on this to complete their particular projects. Anyway, so, I mean, it's the democratic process. I won't beat a dead horse.
Go ahead.
Certainly, there is opportunities as to how the board can expedite the process of any items in the docket. And as Commissioner Minister stated, adding additional staff is just part of the answer. And also putting some, we're going to use this word very carefully, some expectations on the Planning Commission may be something you can consider. Because the Planning Commission can probably have a limit as to how many public hearings can have or how many work sessions can have on any particular item. And going back to And that's something you may discuss as you move along and how you can expedite and streamline the process. The wireless code, I believe that is exactly the result of the public process. The board was made aware that perhaps the planning commission was ready to provide a recommendation on the wireless code. At the same time, you receive a recommendation to form a stakeholder or citizens group, which the board approved the formation of the citizens group on the wireless code. They went ahead and provided recommendations, and there was a disconnect perhaps, and that's my word, between the planning commission and the stakeholder group. And that was the result of the vote recommendation for you. The majority of the planning commission affirmed the recommendations for you to take an action. And the minority report that you received was from the stakeholder group. But I believe that is exactly the reflection of the public process. And that is what it takes the most time on every single item, because at the end of the day, I believe when your legislative action taking place, you need to be assured that you have provided the public, whatever the public sees the item, differently or not, is for you to give the public the opportunity to provide your comments. Absent the public comment requirements of the GMA, we take that aside. It could be just a technical exercise to update the code, and you can update the code in a month. But that's not the process that we have in place by GMA. And GMA requires to go through a public process for the legislative authority to make a decision based on the best possible information presented to you. And that is really is the struggle. I believe there's opportunities for you to consider how you can expedite the process again. Adding a staff is one. You have considered last year adding a staff. But again, it's always the balance as to how much money you have on the general fund. In that year, every year we go through the same conversations with the board. You have a desire to add additional planners. And then other priorities takes place in order for you to make budget decisions. But I do believe within the process, there is an opportunity for the board to put some parameters for the planning commission, and that's something that Josh and I will be bringing this to you later on. Consultants, we have exercised that option of consultants. And we have exercised consultants in previous docketing process. But a consultant, at least that I know, cannot take a public process on their own in order to expedite the process, in order to expedite the item. So it becomes a little bit of a balanced approach. Anyways, those the three thoughts that and those thoughts I have shared with the board on a couple of occasions in the past. And this is the process they need to go through, so.
Thank you, County Manager. I think that Commissioner Edwards, you're spot on wireless code as an example. And when Maya on slide 9 talks about impacts to timing, wireless code, thinking about that is really, I think, a key to this puzzle as the county manager is kind of putting it out there. Adding staff is one way to help the process. But with the wireless code, what we saw was 15 planning commission reviews and then 3 board of county commissioner reviews. So you see impacts to timing and it's public engagement. That's the stakeholder group that the board directed us to form. And then the planning commission review, that's that time, the public engagement. So you can either say bureaucratic process or you can say public engagement. They're kind of the same thing in that scope. But that's the time. It's not about just staff, it's about the public engagement process. And specifically with wireless, the staff was able to bring back a suite of options. And if you'll recall, your planning commission chair came into a Board of County Commission meeting and said, we did hear the stakeholder group, we just didn't agree with them. And that's where the majority opinion came from. The staff worked within the Board of County Commissioners hired legal counsel to set the sideboards that were legal for the Planning Commission to consider. And that suite of options that we brought to the Board of County Commissioners allows for you to look at those different options and decide what your level of legal risk is. So I just wanna put a frame around the wireless code item because we did do what the board asked us to do. There was a lot of public engagement, and it's a clear example of why some of these items take longer and create bottlenecks for the other items to go through. There's only so many people on the planning commission, there's only so many nights in a month that we can have planning commission meetings, the comment period, the stakeholder group, so it's not just staffing, but there is a process for improving the efficiency of how we move those items through. And I would welcome that conversation, I think it's an important one to have. Now that we have a handle on the staffing, that back page that Commissioner Minzer pointed to, that exercise is a relatively new exercise in that breakdown. I think it's a really good piece of the puzzle. The next part is really illuminating what we can do in terms of the process. And we've just gone through and looked at all of the different items that we have and how many times they are reviewed at planning commission, the length of time that's spent there, the length of time that's spent in public comment, and the length of time that's spent at Board of County Commissioner. Because Commissioner, the goal, Commissioner Edwards, is to get to an approval, right? But it's not just staff time. It's PC review, it's BoCC review, it's public review. And if we want to improve that process to get more items through, thinking about how we do that better, I think is a really important topic. So I agree, but this is your guys' this is the Board of County Commissioners' decision, and we respect whatever you tell us to do.
Commissioner Edwards.
Is it not an option? Many jurisdictions use outside consultants to do these
We
projects.
do use outside consultants. The industrial land study, we have an outside consultant that's providing their technical.
Let's use them more. What's wrong with using them more?
We are-
There seems to be a resistance towards moving things forward. That's what seems to be alive and well. Just a minute, and I'm gonna say that the whole wireless thing, I get the sense that we ended up with outside advice that was working for corporate America, that really didn't give a damn about the citizens of Thurston County.
It's your attorney.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Something's going on when we end up with those kind of sideboards that don't seem to be necessary, but benefit corporate America without taking into consideration our citizens. That's just my position on it. But I really think we are missing the boat by not utilizing those outside consultants much more often. But again, it takes away the control from the county, you might say. Because these outside consultants know the process better than our employees in many cases. They know the Growth Management Act. They know the rules that they have to follow. But we don't seem to be willing to do it.
But you just said that in the wireless case, the consultant was working for corporate America against the citizens of Thurston County. And
Well-
that can very well happen in any of these cases, so that's the challenge.
Well, but we eventually find out, and that's what I'm finding out, if you wanna get into the wireless, is the wireless code could have been handled way earlier if, matter of fact, I commend your statement, sir, in that particular debate. Where else can you find more expertise than Silicon Valley? Nobody brought that to us except the citizens that were so frustrated with this whole process. And in reviewing the sideboards that were put in place, looks to me like we're a bit biased.
But it required us to slow down and listen to the people, not the consultant. That would have been faster to just take the consultant's recommendation, but we would have been enacting a wireless code against the interests of the citizens. So that's the push and pull of having consultants hired to do the work and bypassing the public process. That's slow.
You're correct. I mean, it became slow and it was slowed down mainly by the process. I wish I knew more about wireless. I would have went down and talked to the people in Silicon Valley. But I thought that's what we had staff for, was to try and expedite things and get them done.
County Manager.
My humble opinion, the reason as to why you go through a public process is for you to receive public testimony on very significant issues that will affect the local community. And the citizens in these communities, they provide you their perspective as to how any particular legislative action can affect them. I don't think it will be prudent legislative action to take a code from Silicon Valley and try to impose here in Thurston County.
It's worth looking at, sir.
And that's the direction the board took, and it will in the process. But I don't think it will be good public policy for the board to take a resolution, a code, or an ordinance from California and trying to impose here in Thurston County.
Well, I disagree with you, sir.
I'm providing my
just so you know
perspective,
that.
sir.
And the board disagreed with you on that particular topic, and I hope you'll do your due diligence and bring us the proper information that we're looking for. And as far as public process, the importance of it, if the applicant hires outside consultants, experts, the public process is going to be implemented all during the phase of that activity moving forward. They will hold the public hearings, they'll set them up. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know other jurisdictions have no problem doing this. And we seem to, I feel, keep our head in the sand, but.
So relating back to the topic at hand, we are doing our due diligence on wireless code. And so as the board directed, we're getting more information. That directly relates to why things take longer. That's what we're doing. We're doing what we're responding to.
Why didn't staff bring us some information that made sense early?
Your legal attorney provided that information at the beginning of the process. when the
There,
stakeholder-
I see some flaws, but I'm not gonna get into a liability situation at that point, but I think something's
So
wrong.
setting wireless aside, in terms of the process, that's a very clear example of why it takes longer.
So going back to kind of how the docket is right now, what I'm hearing, right, is there's contention between adding matters and not adding matters. I have a question in regard to the Thurston 2045 periodic comprehensive plan update. And for that one, you know, I think we've heard a lot of rumblings about that one and the amount of work that's going to be laid out in front. I feel like that's another item that can definitely be used, we can use a consultant for. And when we discuss this item next year, I definitely want to see kind of those proposals. And I'm kind of just laying this out now of items where we can use a consultant, right? Where it, you know, I feel like this item, it's saying it's gonna be 3.5 staff. Well, if we're using a consultant, will that reduce the number of staff that we need so they can work on other projects as well? So maybe bringing forth those proposals, that way we can, when we're making these decisions on where to direct these resources to, we have that information. Because that's, you know, one of the ones where we're going to have.
Yeah, no, thank you, Commissioner, sorry. We have in the past, and we will again, ask for consultants on chapters within the comprehensive plan. We hired outside economic development consultants to help us with that chapter, and we'll bring that all forward with the comprehensive plan discussion. I will say also, be prepared for the budget conversation coming up, because we are gonna be asking for more professional services to hire folks outside to provide the expertise to try and move these items quicker with more, I guess, expertise, expert information. So just as a preview, be ready for that. We are thinking about consultants. We have done and will continue to use them.
Okay, so.
So,
Commissioners?
really, if there's no other comments, I think the decision for you at this point, as staff provided at the beginning, is do you like to just reaffirm the current docket? And the second option is for you to exercise your decision whether you want to add, remove, or reprioritize any items included on the official docket. Let's start with the first one. You'd like to reaffirm the existing docket as presented, as approved.
You're asking for a thumbs up or thumbs down?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm in favor of option 2. I'm in favor of moving ahead with progress in a timely fashion.
I'm for option 2 because I would like to reprioritize one. item there, and I kind of let the commissioners know which one.
I understand what you're saying, but I really don't want to open that box, so I'm just giving you.
So I have two commissioners like to really open the docket. So under option 2, you have add, remove, or reprioritize. Let me ask you what items you'd like to add to this docket.
Are we here today to make that decision? I was under the understanding that if we went with option 2, we would receive more information.
What additional information you would
I
like to have?
don't know. We've had a lot of different things. presented.
Certainly, if there's any additional information the board needs, let
Well,
us know.
I'd put them all on if it was up to
So,
me, and we'll use outside consultants to make it happen.
So your suggestion is to add all the new proposals to the docket?
It is for now, until we get a chance to go over it.
Okay. Commissioners, would like to add any items to the docket? So no additions to the docket, as I see it. So do you like to remove any items from the docket? I don't see any. So the last question that I have is, do you like to reprioritize any items within the current docket?
The natural landmark program.
And I do have a question about that.
So the proposal is to reprioritize the natural, landmark.
Where do you want to put it, Commissioner?
So then we can have discussion about this.
I have some information maybe that would help. That decision.
Go ahead, sir.
Do we have any other examples where this has been done elsewhere? Then maybe we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't sound like a very complicated process. If others have studied it, looked at it, went through the process and it's similar, we might just be able to plagiarize something that's already been done with a little tweak here and a little tweak there and be a bit more efficient. So I'd like to see that from staff. If does anybody have any knowledge about that?
Commissioner Edwards, I will respond to that question. So the applicant did provide examples in their application, but they're only similar in nature and not exactly what he is proposing. So we would look at some of the other tools that folks are doing around the country, but this will be kind of a creative development code option. Commissioner Mejia, just to respond to your request to reprioritize this proposal, this is the next item that we do not have staff assigned to. So it's next up in line anyways, based on its current position on the development code docket. And once we have a staff person available, we'll be shifting someone to this development code proposal. To reprioritize it, we'll reallocate someone from existing work.
So Maya, I'm gonna put you on the spot, you and Chris a little bit. What are the items that are close to the finish line that might have that staff reassigned to the natural landmark program? And how close are they to the finish line?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start, Chris, with what I know. The Thurston County critical areas for agriculture is very close to the finish line. I believe the county commissioners just had or have a public hearing on that very soon. And that item, I'm sorry, what was that?
The county manager said next week.
Next week. And so that,
Hearing on that.
and that item will be very close to completion after that.
As you describe the items, just for the benefit of the public, can you add the CPA, the number, since that is a document and for the public consumption?
Yes, absolutely. And that's item A18. Other items that are close to the finish line. So we do have a couple of other code amendments, A29 signboard posting procedures, A13 miscellaneous clerical errors, and A28 clarification on expansion of non-conforming and non-residential uses. Those are all code amendments towards the bottom of the docket that are being reviewed as a package, and they're in review with Planning Commission right now. However, they're fairly small amendments, so we expect those to move through the process fairly quickly without a lot of public comment. And we expect we can complete those by mid to late this year. And then comp plan proposals, let me go ahead and scroll up to that sheet. Grand Mound sub-area plan has moved through Planning Commission and we'll be starting review with the UGM subcommittee. We'll hope to bring that to the board in the first half of this year. So there are a lot of items that are nearing completion. The big ones that will fall off are the development code amendments. But after we get through kind of the planning commission process and start bringing things to the board, we typically will start the research phase of a new project. And so we'll be having some staff availability free up to pick up the new projects to include the natural landmark program and some other comp plan amendments.
So I'm just gonna put it out there, functionally, within the next 3 months, staff could be assigned to working on the natural landmark program. Is that spitballing pretty close?
I think that's an accurate statement. I'll let Chris chime in if she has anything to add.
No, I think that is a good estimate as far as when staff would be available, if not sooner.
So it might not take reprioritization.
Well, that will be probably up to Madam Chair, since she brought this item. If this explanation requires you to withdraw that proposal, or you'd like to reprioritize that.
It's the next item, and I'm hearing it in the next 3 months, there'll be a staff actually assigned to this and then kind of get started on it. I'm comfortable with that explanation. I just didn't want to hear that it was gonna take until Q4 of 2023, and then we were going to like assign someone on to this. So with that, I will.
Will you withdraw your proposal to reprioritize?
Yes, Commissioner Menzer? Yes, I will.
I have a question about Grand Mountain Sub-Area Plan, which is #1 priority from the comp plan docket. You mentioned that it's to the UGM subcommittee, is that what you called it?
That's the next step. We're in the process of scheduling that. TRPC facilitates scheduling that, so it's really out of our hands in terms of when, but we've been poking them to get that on the calendar, and that's the next step, and then it'll come to the board.
Can you explain what that subcommittee can do to that item? Because I know that's a sub-area plan plus like 7 or 8 specific, site-specific proposals that are in and around the sub-area. So are they just looking at the ones that are UGA expansions, or do they have a broader role? And if the answer is just UGA expansion, do they get veto power over it, or do they make recommendations, or what is their authority vis-a-vis our process?
Thank you. The UGM subcommittee will review the land use requests that are requesting to expand the UGA, and they produce a recommendation on those specific requests. They don't have veto power, but that recommendation will come to the Board of County Commissioners for your consideration, in addition to the Planning Commission recommendation that was made on all of these proposals.
And Maya, just to confirm, that process is part of the state mandated process, correct?
That's correct. It's state mandated and through our countywide planning policies.
And I would imagine that, because I know these things can be appealed, like if the board, if the subcommittee said, don't do it, law's not met, the Board of County Commissioners said, nope, we're doing it, we want to approve that project, then that can be appealed, and it's probably, I'm just guessing, it's probably relevant at that point that the subcommittee, that we contradicted a subcommittee recommendation, depending on how thorough their analysis was.
That's correct. The board would need to make specific findings, and the findings are outlined under state law and our countywide planning policies as into what you need to meet to expand a UGA, and the board would need to make findings to justify those expansions. You can certainly make a decision that is different from the UGM subcommittee and the Planning Commission recommendation, but there need to be findings to support that decision.
And those findings track, there was some discussion of that in the recent letter we got from Tumwater.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what you're talking about. We have to make those, it was like this, or this, or this, and this, and this. You know, and those are the same ones you're talking about.
Yep, that's exactly right, and that applies to those properties in Grand Mountain as well.
Going back to the development code, the new items, with those items, if they're not added onto the preliminary prelim docket, then do they have to, like, if it was citizen initiated, do they have to kind of refile it? How does that work?
So everything that is new that we brought forward this year that's not on the official docket, if the board does not make any changes and reaffirms the existing official dockets, we'll bring all of those back to the county commissioners in early 2024. The applicant doesn't need to do anything. We notify them when that process begins.
Just to walk through your decision, make sure that I didn't miss anything.
Are we ready? Yeah.
So just to walk through the decisions the board made this morning, you have two options before you. Option one, which is reaffirm the 6th official docket, and number two was to change, which will include add, remove, or reprioritize items. The board voted on option two, 2-1. Commissioner Messer voted for option one. Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner Edwards voted for option two. You follow up with the decision that Commissioner Edwards voted to add all the proposals to the docket. That did not get a second. You also, the board did not remove any items from the official docket. And Commissioner Mejia proposed a reprioritizing CR1, which is a natural landmark program. Staff provided a status of that, and Commissioner Mejia withdrew that proposal. So the result of that is you are reaffirming the existing docket as presented. So all the new items, as you heard, will be part of the preliminary docket. They will be up for discussion early next year, 2024. Did I miss anything?
I covered it.
No point jumping up and down, is there?
No.
Okay, anything else from staff?
None from me.
Then, just so commissioners are aware, we are gonna be having this discussion later on with budget. Josh already gave us the heads up that this
Madam
will be
Chair.
coming up.
Might I ask you another question, being as we've got a few minutes here? As this process moves forward, and I don't know, we don't get the project done that the chair was talking about. Are we in a position that we can, I mean, this is kind of a mid-cycle adjustment, if you will. Is there 3/4 of the way through cycle adjustment? I mean, are we locked in by state law? We could only do this as one time mid-cycle, or can we think about doing another mid-cycle? Maybe a few months down the road if there's extenuating circumstances develop, or, you know, looks like it'd be really beneficial if we do X, Y, or Z. Are we allowed to open that up under the current regulation, the bureaucratic process that we seem to live under? Are we allowed to open this up next week, next month, a couple months from now?
Yeah, I believe the development code docket can be updated many times in the year as you see fit.
Well, if I remember right, in North Point, they were asking us to reopen the document early.
Right was, yeah. So you do have that option, Commissioner.
So it would be up to us as a board to, I mean, I could see that I'm not gonna get a second vote. It doesn't look like today to do that, but maybe a month from now,
You absolutely have the
I
right.
could bring it up on an agenda. Hey, is any change of heart here? You think we ought to do
Absolutely,
something different?
The board can direct the staff to open the development.
Golly,
code
this
docket
topic might not be dead. We might hear a whole bunch about this further down the road. Also, I'll probably sound like a broken record,
What?
but because I like to be consistent.
Absolutely.
If you recall, we have gone through this process before, and the process for the development code is you open up the entire docket again and have a whole public process on all of the items and discussion and public engagement. So again, that's that additional time that would be spent, but it's within the board's purview to open the development code docket up for review to the community.
Didn't we do that in that, the North Point, we did
We
it,
did that in
took the comment and
September.
then decided not to add anything mid-cycle, but we did reopen the process and have that comment
we did.
period. Correct. And then we reconsidered it again at the regular time the following spring.
Okay. So with that, it is 10:15. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Commissioners.